So we're in Romans 15. Romans 15 and 16, Paul closes out his argument for a missional community going forth to proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ to the nations. And in chapter 15, if there was a heading I'd place over that chapter, it'd be the word focus. Paul encourages us to seek ways to build up those with whom we disagree, to listen to them, to welcome them, uses that honorific language. In the English Standard Version, it uses the word welcome. In New American Standard, it talks about acceptance. But it's speaking of honorific language, of honoring those with whom we disagree, to remember God's mercy, to extend hope, to dialogue together, to stay in relationship, to stay connected, to extend grace, to remember that our mission is to reach those far from God. In chapter 15 and verse 21, it says, "They who had no news of him shall see, and they who have not heard shall understand." So we want to reach those who are far from God, to reach those who are not yet part of God's family, that is the focus, not the things over which we disagree as believers, but to focus around the things that unite us. And then he continues and says, use your resources to support those who are doing that. He says he's getting ready to go to Spain, and he expects the church in Rome to support his efforts financially to go to the next place, to the next location. I remember as I was a young church planter, I went over for a lunch with a friend who had invited us to lunch that day, and he was telling me he didn't believe in tithing. He believed that we should give based on need. And I said, well, okay. But I sensed that his argument was hollow, that it wasn't about tithing, it wasn't about giving, it was about he wanted to keep his resources for himself. And he had a very nice bike, he had a very nice camera, and just a very nice guitar, and none of those things, nothing's wrong with that, but his heart seemed to actually be just closed financially. And I said, so you believe we should give based on need? He said, absolutely. And at the lunch, we had paper plates that day for what we were eating. I said, hand me an extra plate, please. And he handed me a plate, and I wrote on the back of that plate a list. And then I pushed the list over to him, and I said, man, that's great that you believe giving based on need. Here are some needs that we have. He and his family felt led to go to another church. It exposed his heart. He wasn't about giving. And Paul says, keep the focus on expanding the gospel and pushing it out. During this time where we're dealing with coronavirus, I've been on Zoom calls and Skype calls, WhatsApp calls from Sweden to throughout Europe and Spain, and speaking with people and writing with folks in England, and with folks in Mexico, and people in Zambia, and folks whose heart is in Tanzania. So we're pushing the gospel out, even at a time where we're having to do so electronically. And then we move into chapter 16 of Romans, and in chapter 16, Paul gives us a list of the leaders with whom he's involved, and he opens up, and again, using honorific language. The English Standard really captures it when it says Phoebe, the patron, in a patron-client type culture that he's dealing with there, and he outlines that. And then he gives us a list of what many believe to be the house church planters. So he has two lists in chapter 16. One, the recipients of the letter, and he lists a group of names there, a third of which are women. And then he gives a list of his traveling team and his training team, and he outlines that. And he closes the chapter saying in verse 20 of chapter 16 of Romans, the God of peace, great contrast here, the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. The grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with you. That our enemy isn't each other. Our enemy is the enemy of our souls, Satan himself. And that we will crush him under our feet. And then he closes that out by saying, God, who has been made known to all the nations, leading to obedience of faith to the only wise God through Jesus Christ, be the glory forever. He begins the book by saying, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. He closes the book by saying, it's to the glory of God. So honor being restored to God. And as we honor God, he honors us, we honor each other, and people come to know Jesus Christ. Push the gospel forward. Keep the focus on the expansion of the good news of Jesus Christ.